Good morning. Thank you very much, Matt. Yes, we're looking forward to a thrilling Grand Prix this afternoon, and we're expecting quite a lot of incidents. Looking back over the free practice sessions that we've enjoyed already this weekend, and indeed qualifying, Montoya went wide, we saw other incidents, and the races this weekend, Formula 3000 has already seen a lot of action. Pantano going on to win, but the main championship leaders getting into trouble. So John, lots of overtaking opportunities, but lots of opportunities for mistakes today.
Well, I think one of the causes of mistakes may well turn out to be heat exhaustion. We've seen already some of the race fans and the grandstands slip, slap, slop. And that means putting the sun cream on, the sun hat on and the shades on to make sure that you cover yourself up. Now, a racing driver in a Grand Prix car has got protection. He's got his helmet, he's got his overalls. But it's a bit like being put into a microwave and power-boiled, because with temperatures going to rise very high and the potential for humidity being high as well, and a work rate which I think is going to be higher for the drivers than they've ever experienced previously on the Hockenheimring circuit, it will be a tough race. So it'll be a survival of the fittest, both mechanically and physically.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough one. The temperatures are climbing already. 32 degrees track temperature at the moment, some 23 degrees air temperature, and it wasn't much hotter than that for the actual qualifying session yesterday. So temperatures are going to be very, very much higher today, and certainly that's what Ron Dennis expected as well. We heard that he expected the higher temperatures today, and that was part of the reason for going for the tyres that they chose. Peter, I think you've got more information on tyre choice today.
Yes, Ben. As we said yesterday, it looks as if both Williams and McLaren have opted for the harder of the two Michelin tyres. Both Williams and McLaren on that. And also Pedro de la Rosa of Jaguar. Otherwise, everybody else, Michelin runners, are on the softer tyre. On the Bridgestone side, Ferrari, no surprise, have gone for the hard compound, but every other Bridgestone runner is on the softer tyre.
Right, well, that's interesting. Good to hear that, and that's amazing that Ferrari again on the harder tyre, able to take pole position. Michael Schumacher taking his first pole here at Hockenheim, and can he now convert it into what would be his second win at this track?
And of course Ferrari having the advantage of being by far and away the most competitive car all year, and that therefore allows them the luxury of running on a tyre which gives them more opportunities, more flexibility, and not concerned about any drop-off or degradation, which is going to be an issue we feel here this weekend in terms of tyre performance. So Ferrari really have dominated this year, and even at this point in the season when they've now won the Drivers' Championship, they're still pursuing that Manufacturers' Championship. And of course they want to sew that up as soon as possible. And never forget that the points that the manufacturers score relate to future income. And that's part of the way that teams generate income for their budgets for the upcoming season. And something that Ferrari, even though they may have the biggest budget in the field, are very conscious of earning.
Well, David Coulthard here was somewhat disappointed with his 9th fastest time in qualifying yesterday. He ran wide on his first flying lap attempt, really, and then said that perhaps just lost his rhythm a little bit and was a little over cautious towards the end of the session. So he's ended up with what is his worst qualifying performance of the year so far. On the 5th row of the grid, he'll be joined by Nick Heidfeld back there. But today, the supporters are cheering for one man, Michael Schumacher. They've got Ralph, of course, on the front row of the grid to enjoy in case Michael has any problems. And it's exactly a year ago since his last retirement from a Grand Prix. It was here at Hockenheim, but it's been a whole year since he's gone out of a Grand Prix.
Well, you have to say Ferrari have had fantastic value for money from Michael Schumacher in terms of mileage and wins. I mean, I think this man has continued and will continue to set new benchmarks, and he just doesn't lose any enthusiasm. As I was talking about in that piece prior to going into the warm-up in relation to Mika Häkkinen retiring, Mika deciding to call it a day, yet Michael Schumacher, really, the pair were contemporaries, came into Formula One pretty much the same time, 1991. In fact, Mika came in slightly ahead of Michael. Nevertheless, Michael Schumacher's just enthusiasm, resolve for Formula One was undiminished, and Mika, for some reason, has decided that he's had enough, and there is a reason for that somewhere, and I still would like to get to the bottom of it.
Now I think we've got the chance, talking of McLaren driver Mika Häkkinen in the past, we've got the chance to speak to Ron Dennis this morning. Good morning, Ron.
Morning to you.
Now, it's great to have you with us for this morning's warm-up. Yesterday's situation, you were telling us that you were going for the slightly harder tyre compound. David, a little bit disappointed, no doubt, to end up back down in 9th position. What do you think of the prospects for today? That temperature is certainly climbing, isn't it?
Well, it's like it's been pan out as predicted. It's not just the ambient temperature that's important, it's the sustained temperature build up of the track itself. We're expecting 35 degrees, and that's going to cause a lot of people a lot of problems. Hopefully it won't cause us too many problems.
Now, David said yesterday that he felt that he'd lost his rhythm a little bit in qualifying. Is that really what happened with him? Were there any technical problems as well?
No, there were no technical problems. I think what he's really talking about is the fact that when you take a harder option, then the car does become less balanced until the tyre gets right into its operating range. And unlike what we call the option tyre, prime being the harder of the two, the option tyre tends to come in much faster. You can get one clean, balanced lap on it. So car a little difficult to drive on the harder tyre, but as I said earlier and yesterday, it's probably the right thing. Well, probably is the right thing for the race.
Now, just finally, Ron, we saw the video that you mentioned from Mika Häkkinen, and of course he's made his retirement clear. We were talking earlier in the programme about Kimi Räikkönen, whether he can fill the footsteps of Mika Häkkinen, fill his shoes rather. How do you feel about that? I know it's still early days for Kimi, but how do you feel he's progressing within the team?
Well, I think last weekend said it all, really. It was a very mature drive. I think it's a little unkind of anybody to say he made a mistake. He was the typical first driver on the scene on the oil, and I think if the situation had been reversed, Michael was in the lead, it could have well happened the other way around. It's the advantage, and there's very few advantages, but it's one advantage of lying second, is you can always tell by the car in front exactly what the circuit conditions are. Give Michael that brief moment to lift and collect it all together.
Great, well, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Hope the warm-up goes well, and we'll look forward to a great Grand Prix this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the morning warm-up is underway, cars on track, and Michael Schumacher has set the initial pace, although nobody's really done a complete flying lap. Ralf Schumacher sitting in the pits currently. Montoya not in the car. Now remember, you were talking, John, earlier on this weekend about the fact that Williams tend not to do so many laps in the morning warm-up, and I see that Montoya actually not in his car at the moment, although he has done the one installation lap.
Well, this is down to BMW. They determine the mileage of the engine. They're very, very strict on how that is then implemented. Williams, I feel, are beginning to sense that they lose out on this final 30-minute session. It's not a particularly important session, but it means that they'd have to go into a whole engine change cycle, and there's always a risk of changing an engine, an unforced change, and then not being able to take the car out and find out whether there is a problem with that renewed engine or the fresh engine you might put into the chassis. This is their policy, and I gather that they're fairly inflexible and not easy always to deal with. You're dealing with a Bavarian logic, not a German logic here.
McNish coming through into the pit lane and very much keen to get that speed limiter on. He's been done twice for speeding in the pit lane this weekend, totaling $3,000 worth of fine. He got a fine of $1,000 for the first transgression on Friday, and then a $2,000 fine yesterday. So it's getting a bit expensive for him coming up and down the pit lane. Looks as though he's going to have the spare car because he's hopped out of one and into another. And remember that today Rubens Barrichello has the spare car, so he'll be doing the dancing around between act, but it's usually Michael Schumacher's job on a Sunday morning.
Well, I think Michael's fairly relaxed and happy with the situation. His car has been outstanding all weekend, and well, we've mentioned so many occasions the work that Rubens has done to support Ferrari, and it's really supporting Ferrari rather than supporting Michael Schumacher that Rubens has had at times to make sacrifices. Now it's payback time, and Rubens has got the luxury of running backwards and forwards from spare to T car or back into his race car, and he'll certainly realise how much additional work and responsibility Michael Schumacher has had to shoulder when Rubens has really had to focus just on his own race car and just enjoy those 30 minutes in that one car.
Yeah, and it's good to see, and I'm sure he's relishing the opportunity to have the spare car and to have that extra work here today, as the problems on the grid in the last couple of Grand Prix for Rubens Barrichello have certainly affected him. He still managed to get a great second place at Silverstone, but of course he never got going at all at the French Grand Prix at Manicourt. So let's hope for better luck for Barrichello today. We're watching Ralf Schumacher, winner here last year on the older track, and really enjoying the new track as well. He's really enjoyed getting to grips with this newly designed circuit. Now, we're talking about the Ferrari situation, the fact that Barrichello's got the spare car this weekend. And, of course, there's been a lot of controversy this year about team orders within the Ferrari team, what will happen between Schumacher and Barrichello. I wonder what the story is now. I think, Peter, you've got some information on that for us.
Well, I have indeed, Ben, yes, as Ruben just goes out in the spare car again. He started in the spare, did one lap in the race car, now he's back in the spare again. He's loving every minute of it, trotting between the two, as you say. But yes, it's very interesting to see how things fall Michael Schumacher's way. After he won the Austrian Grand Prix, or after he'd been let, Rubens allowed him to win the Austrian Grand Prix, they pulled up in Parc Fermé long before the reaction of the crowd, long before any of the controversy. The first thing Michael Rubens was, don't worry, I'll let you win plenty of races after I've won the championship. Of course, now, with all that furore post-Austria, the last thing Michael could be seen to be doing is backing off and letting Rubens win races. So poor Rubens now is going to have to earn his wins. He's not going to be given any wins on a plate by Michael, because Michael can't be seen to be doing that by the regulations. So if we hadn't had that controversy in Austria, I think you would have found Michael 2 or 3 times between now at the end of the year, if he had had the opportunity, just letting Rubens get on with it and win the race.
Well, that's a good point, and we shall watch that with interest over the rest of the season. Of course, Rubens' record on German-speaking circuits has been pretty good this year. He won at the Nürburgring when Michael had that spin, and team orders never did actually come into play there. In Austria, Rubens had the race win until team orders very definitely came into play. I wonder what will happen here at Hockenheim.
Well, all I can say is make no mistake, Michael Schumacher is not going to just gift a win to Rubens. I think what will happen is if Rubens is leading on merit, Michael will then maybe not challenge that lead, but if Michael is leading the race, he is not going to pull over or slow down or do anything to let Rubens win a Grand Prix, partly from what Peter has said, because the eyes of the world will be on the Ferraris, but primarily because Michael, it is not in his nature to pull over and gift a win to his teammate.
No, that's right. It comes back to that motivation and commitment you were talking about earlier, John. It's just not part of his makeup to do that sort of thing. Let's enjoy some action here on track. Felipe Massa, well, he usually provides us plenty of action. Let's see what he's up to.
He's just gone fastest.
Fastest time from the young Brazilian. Bit of a disappointing time for Sauber yesterday, wasn't it? They got Heidfeld into 10th place on the grid, but Felipe Massa's struggling somewhat and only ended up 14th.
Well, both Saubers were 5th and 6th on Saturday morning before we went into qualifying. Looked like they were going to be the best of the rest. They were going to dominate the 3rd row of the grid. And all of a sudden it just didn't happen. Heidfeld back in the 5th row and Felipe Massa back in the 7th row, so they will both be very disappointed indeed. But do not forget, with the weather changes and expected to be hot, steamy and no doubt sultry here in Hockenheim when we go to the Grand Prix at 2 o'clock, choice of tyre may be either lucky or be very wise indeed, and there's going to be a 2-stop strategy for this Grand Prix. So don't write off anybody in this race, particularly the Sauber, which we know has been very quick at some parts during this 2-day, up to now the 3 days of the Grand Prix.
Well, that was I don't know if the Sauber team's pulled a plug somewhere, but Massa continues round on his lap, and it looks as though this could be a further improvement. We'll switch to
Yes,
Kimi.
it is 18.4, so he's improved by a further 2.5 tenths of a second.
Yep, so about 4 seconds away from the pole position time from Michael Schumacher yesterday. Now the cars have plenty of fuel on board. Kimi Räikkönen heads back into the pits. A good effort from him, 5th on the grid once again. So apart from the last Grand Prix at Manicourt, he's qualified on the 3rd row every time this year.
Well, Kimi gets, whoa. Well, this is my bogey corner of the circuit. It's the Agip curb. You come off the old circuit very much quicker this year than ever before, due to the fact that we've got a lot more downforce, but cars finding the track, the width of the track here, really inhibiting them on the exit. And look at that. Well, we saw one Sauber flicking around. This is Nick Heidfeld in the 2nd Sauber. Heidfeld also on a fairly quick lap, goes 3rd quickest.
Yeah, it's Massa, Coulthard, Heidfeld, top 3 at the moment, as the Ferraris now beginning to bring up the pace, and Michael Schumacher just getting a little bit out of shape, but controlling it nicely. And look at that, well up on the pace of Felipe Massa.
And Michael staying well away from the curb now. Look at that, almost 3.5 tenths of a second, but a big slide in the middle of the Sachs curve, so it's not all plain sailing. So Rubens Barrichello in the meantime has finished the fastest lap. Now he just eclipsed Felipe Massa by a few hundredths of a second it is. Michael Schumacher comes across the line and he does it by over half a second, and he made it look, on a lap where the car was not as smooth and comfortable, they still nonetheless 17.774.
Frenton's managed to find the gravel at turn 2, and you have to go off a bit to do that because there's a big area of tarmac. Let's take a look and see what happened to him. This is where we've seen a lot of spins this weekend. Misses the apex, comes in, back end steps away. Now, how did he manage to get to the gravel from there then?
Well, I do not know. As it's turn 2, he let it roll all the way back, and I think he thought, oops, and then he just, well, and he's got it going. Maybe it's a bit of Sunday morning, sort of sleepy eyes, but Heinz has got it running again. And Pedro de la Rosa, Jaguar, 5th quickest, Olivier Panis 4th. Two drivers quickly out into the rhythm of the morning. Another star of Saturday, Giancarlo Fisichella, making a stunning recovery from that accident he had at Manicourt. And Giancarlo Fisichella now goes 4th quickest. And Jordan having really the best weekend to date that they've enjoyed for some time.
In fact, both Honda teams doing well this weekend, John, with all 4 Honda-powered cars into the top 12. Honda were very confident about the changes they'd made to this revised engine after Manicourt. Here we are with another Honda-powered car, Jacques Villeneuve. He was a bit disappointed yesterday, but he still ended up with the 11th spot on the grid, and that's not his best to date, but one of the best of the season.
And interestingly, the Honda situation, they've been languishing behind the competition. They've now got an engine developing the horsepower. As we watch Michael Schumacher, this is coming through the Ajup corner. He runs wide. Here we saw that from the onboard. Yes, did he ever run wide? Well, more than I had anticipated. Here's the onboard view of it. It didn't look so bad. Well, you see how much hand movement there was. I think this was actually the subsequent lap. But just going back to the Honda cars are fastest, in fact second quickest, down that long parabolic straight, with Panis and Fisichella first and second in terms of top speed. Just on 200 miles an hour for Panis, just under 200 for Fisichella.
Yes, looking at the speed trap figures, it was quite interesting. The Schumacher ended up with the highest speed trap figure. Quite a long way down the list, which surprised me, was the fact that the Toyotas, Mika Salo 314, that was a full 12 kilometers per hour slower than Michael Schumacher, and normally the Toyotas are very quick. The Ford-powered cars also were quite a long way down the list, all relevant to the amount of downforce that the cars are running. Just an interesting difference this weekend.
Yes, it is the downforce, but it's the fact that Ferrari don't have to run the amount of sort of, I would call it, crude downforce to achieve a lot of downforce. So the efficiency of the aerodynamics in the Ferrari clearly in a league apart from, well, we're looking at Toyota and the Jaguar teams.
Barrichello's gone, Michael Schumacher's gone quicker than Barrichello. Again, 17.462 from him on that last lap. Massa still 3rd, then Fisichella and Olivier Panis 5th fastest, De La Rosa 6th, then Coulthard, Heidfeld, Ralph and Raikkonen. Eddie Irvine, well, Jaguar were disappointed yesterday. Niki Lauda expressed surprise that they weren't a little further up. He's 11th fastest now as he goes over the line, but he will be starting down in 16th place for this afternoon's Grand Prix. De La Rosa used a harder tyre, the harder Michelin, and he ended up 20th, about half a second slower than Irvine.
But I think the session, it really was a funny session. People went out, they found the track conditions very different to how they'd left them 2 hours earlier. Took a long time to get into the rhythm of the conditions. The conditions did improve towards the end, but then of course everybody was out scratching around and maybe making too many changes, trying to tune the car to the racetrack rather than doing it the other way around. And I suspect that maybe Jaguar, along with others, Toyota here on screen included, were chasing the track rather than letting the track come to them. Yeah,
Salo was very disappointed yesterday, said they really were very surprised at how much the track had changed. And he's ended up qualifying down in 19th place. Big surprise that for Mika Salo. Just taking a look inside the BAR pit here. And Olivier Panis with his best qualifying performance of the season so far. And in fact, it's his second best since he's joined BAR Honda, with that 7th spot on the grid this afternoon. That's a good chance to get into the points from there.
really feel, well, to me it doesn't feel a satisfying corner.
Jarno Trulli has spun. That is a similar area to where we saw Montoya off a moment ago.
Yes, it looks as if it may be on the exit, the corner that Jacques Villeneuve is complaining about, where you come back onto the original circuit. There's a wall down there which protects the drag race track, and I think Jarno Trulli maybe has lost, or he hasn't, he's got it going again.
Let's take a look.
Yes, he just loses it here in the right hand, gets another curb, the back end goes away, and from this point onwards Trulli is just a passenger. And there we see the benefit of that high grip tarmac on the runoff areas, bringing the car safely to a standstill, and Trulli now makes his way slowly back to the pits.
So we've got 8.5 minutes left in this morning's warm-up.
Can you tell me when you got the data?
Listening in to
As soon as
Jordan.
you're ready, we'll go then.
And we're just waiting for Fisichella to come back out. The times that we're seeing this morning, about 3 seconds per lap slower than we saw in qualifying yesterday. So they're not running particularly heavy fuel loads this morning in the warm-up. 3 seconds down on what they did in qualifying on virtually no fuel, and on a cooler track as well. So this morning the track should be in reasonably good shape. So we'll just have to see how that translates. We're certainly expecting them to make 2 stops this afternoon.
I think most people, because of the newness of the circuit and the unknown factor, throwing in that maverick weather that's going to come in with the extra heat and the higher humidity, all of which will really give a mix and match. Difficult for teams to create the computer model that they are so familiar with on racetracks that they race on year in, year out.
So Michael Schumacher, Barrichello, Montoya, Fisichella, the top 4. Sato is currently 5th fastest, ahead of Massa, then Panis, De La Rosa, Coulthard and Nick Heidfeld 10th fastest. Michael Schumacher currently sits there in the pits, not bothered about being on track, as we take a quick look at Kimi Räikkönen just locking that right front, but getting away with it, not causing too much problem. That's down into turn 2. There has been quite a lot of action down there. It's where we saw Frentzen spin earlier on this morning. 1 or 2 incidents in the races that were held here yesterday as well. As we mentioned, Pantano winning the Formula 3000 race, Bourdais and Thomas Enger, the championship contenders, both dropping out of the race through various different incidents. So that means the championship stays alive.
Well, here's the man who's going to have the highest work rate of anybody. Watch his hands, they're always moving around. There we go, there we are. Come on, come on, come on. You know, you think he was playing some computer model, the amount of movement he puts into the steering wheel. The trouble is, this is actually attached to the real wheels, not to some computer that is in an arcade.
Yeah, that's true, but he's 4th fastest at the moment, so he's putting in some pretty quick lap times. Let's take a look back here. This was Montoya a moment ago, and he was just trying to clean up the side of the track there, starting in 4th place on today's grid.
Yeah, it's not an ideal position as Kimi Räikkönen flicks. So Kimi Räikkönen improves, 3rd quickest, and that's more like it from McLaren. And again, running on that harder tyre, which Williams are also choosing to run on. So Ron Dennis said, you know, we're not really, well, we would like to be as far forward in the grids as are possible, but nevertheless, this is a long race, 67 laps, and we're thinking about the last lap of the race. We're not thinking about qualifying or what might happen on the first lap.
Ralf Schumacher here. So far he's done 11 laps, down in 13th position. He will be starting on the front row alongside his brother today. Let's see where this lap puts him. Back up to 3rd, so he's now the fastest except for the Ferraris. Right behind Barrichello, some 0.4 of a second slower than Rubens.
Well, here we are, 1 lap on. Let's see any difference. Felipe Massa, no, not at all. There he is, sawing away on the steering wheel. You know, I mean, great entertainment, but, you know, someday somebody's going to take the kid aside and say, look, you know, you're doing much, much more. And in fact, driving a car like that, you're not getting the best out of the chassis.
Well, he's quite quick this morning. He's only about 1.7 seconds off his qualifying pace from yesterday. So they're either running the Sauber pretty light on fuel this morning, or the way they went off yesterday in qualifying, he was very much slower than expected. So perhaps they've dialed it back in again to the track, and they're going to be more of a factor in the race.
Well, Räikkönen go 3rd, no, he stays 4th. In fact, he was quite a long way off, 1.2 seconds, but it's Michael Schumacher out on track now, who's really dominating performances, certainly through that first sector. Giancarlo Fisichella, 3rd and 7th quickest so far, just ahead of his teammate Takuma Sato. Both Jordans working extremely well and benefiting from these upgrades in horsepower from Honda, and feeling a little bit more, well, let's say, confident in what they've done. Fisichella goes 3rd quickest, again confirmation of the pace of the Honda Power Jordan.
Yes, and the Bridgestone tyres. 1, 2, 3 for Bridgestone now, and in fact almost the same time as the Ferraris have already set, but Michael Schumacher's going to take that further out of reach.
Yes, this is going to be lower than the 1:17.4 Barrichello set, assuming that little bit of traffic just ahead. It's I'm just looking at one of the McLarens somewhere. It goes through, no trouble at all. These final two corners, even Michael Schumacher, you can see having to balance the car both in steering and well wide on the exits. That might not compromise his, well, stays second quickest. But Olivier Panis, here we see Panis second in that second sector, fastest of all. Panis has gone quickest.
Yeah, another car on Bridgestone tyres, doing extremely well this weekend generally. Right from the first session in Friday, he's been fast, has the Frenchman, and he's qualified his best of the season so far. It's BAR's best ever qualifying effort in Germany. A good effort once again, fastest overall. His teammate Jacques Villeneuve down in 19th place, however, having completed some 12 laps. So perhaps different fuel loads being tried out between the two BAR Hondas as Coulthard runs wide.
Yes, and expect to see a little bit of that this afternoon as we go back. And Fisichella, Giancarlo Fisichella has gone fastest, 1:17.290. And this is more like a qualifying session than a Sunday morning warm-up.
Yeah, it's surprising to see how many times the fastest time is improving as track conditions change a little bit, but all the Honda-powered cars looking very quick. Ralph doing the same as we saw Montoya doing. They're both starting on that inside line, remember. He's qualified second, Montoya fourth, so they're starting line astern, and they're just trying to clean up that inside track, and it has made a difference here at Hockenheim in the past for getting into the first corner.
Rubens has gone fast. It's so literally almost the front row grid cars, the lead cars by the lap are improving. We're watching that again for Fisichella. So Fisichella got a personal improvement in the first sector. Shortly we'll see what he's doing as he comes out of this right-hand corner where we saw Trulli spin it. And the Jordan looks good. A little bit of a wobble just after the apex. So no, nothing significant in that second sector. Kicks up a little bit of dust as he runs wide on the exit of the Ajib curve. Dives into Sachs curve. Now the last three corners of the lap.
It's been 3 races since Jordan scored any points. He slowed it right down now. 3 races since he had that little run of finishes going in 5th place at the A1 Ring, Monaco and in Canada. So perhaps it's time. Oh, Ralph's gone off.
Yes, Ralf Schumacher's, and that's in the stadium. In fact, it's just about coming into the Opel curve. And there you see it. He went off fairly substantially. That was a big spin for Ralph. As Michael Schumacher, pole position setter, he's setting the fastest first sector time. Ralph managed to spin it, but he decides not to go into the pits, but in fact to continue around and complete the lap and then go on and do another one.
Yes, maybe deciding not to do what his brother Michael did yesterday and take the shortcut into the pits. Let's take a look.
Well, he was on the brakes again. This whole thing of rear end stability, there is an example of it. So he's still actually trundling. And now Michael Schumacher, fastest in all first sector, personal best in second sector. Negotiates successfully through the corner. His brother spun just some seconds ago. Exits cleanly, goes across start-finish line and goes quickest. 1:16.7 by half a second.
Well, that was a good lap from Michael. He's gone fastest ahead of his teammate Rubens Barrichello. Fisichella then third, Panis fourth, Heidfeld fifth, and Coulthard sixth.
What Ralf Schumacher did then, I think, was rather smart. You never thought Ralph was that smart, but maybe he is. After the spin, I thought he was going to go into the pits. What he did is he continued on the track, but down on the side of the track he's going to start, and there you can see some very black lines. As he came down to where his start position is, he just lit it up, switched traction control off, did almost like a dragster burnout, put rubber down, and he'll be looking for that rubber come at the start of the Grand Prix in about 4 hours' time.
So Ralph, a very sensible move there, starting from the front row of the grid. He won from that same spot here last year, but it was Montoya who led the early stages from pole position. Now the checkered flag comes out on the morning warm-up, and at the moment it is Michael Schumacher who is fastest. Sato's popped up to 5th, so both Jordans in the top 5. That's an impressive performance, with Olivier Panis just separating them.
Well, suddenly the Honda engine team's really back into the race. I mean, it's been a long time since we've seen the consistency of performance, but particularly in qualifying, and now again on Sunday morning. And Olivier Panis fast the second sector of anybody. A little lock-up coming into the Sachs curve, traffic one of the BMWs ahead of him, and that's Ralf Schumacher. That'll have affected Panis' lap and probably not make the improvement that we would have expected from his first and sector times. So Panis comes across start-finish line and he goes, well, he stays in fact in 4th place, but clearly strong performance expected this afternoon.
Pretty difficult to hear from the radio, but they must be very pleased with that performance. It would have put him ahead of Fisichella, I'm sure, if he hadn't got a little bit held up on the last sector, but even so, he's ended up 4th fastest this morning. So 2 Ferraris at the top, then it's Fisichella in the Jordan, Panis in the BAR, then Sato, Heidfeld 6th. The fastest Michelin runner is David Coulthard, down in 7th position ahead of Ralf Schumacher, Raikkonen and Montoya.
Well, I thought the real excitement for this Grand Prix at the start is going to come from the 3rd row of the grid with Kimi Raikkonen and Fisichella, but don't forget that Olivier Panis on the 4th row of the grid and Nick Heidfeld back in the 5th row of the grid. Now, from what we are seeing, the Bridgestone tyre clearly is working extremely well in these conditions. It will be a lot hotter come 2 o'clock, but nevertheless it's going to be a fascinating Grand Prix behind the 2 Ferraris, which frankly I think are just going to get up and disappear once we start the Grand Prix.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one, and Coulthard's going to have a tough afternoon from 9th place on the grid. The 2 BAR Hondas, look at the difference between them this morning. Olivier Panis 4th fastest and Jacques Villeneuve 17th fastest, despite completing a full 15 laps during this session. Jenson Button ended up 18th fastest. He did 11 laps, so quite a long way down the order. McNish was 19th as well. So let's take a look at the standings from this morning's warm-up. Michael Schumacher ends up fastest, and look at all those Bridgestone runners at the top of the timesheets. Fisichella, Panis, Sato and Heidfeld all on Bridgestones, and then the fastest of the Michelin runners, it was Coulthard ahead of the Williams of Schumacher, and then Kimi Raikkonen's McLaren and the 2nd Williams of Montoya. So very evenly matched times there between McLaren and Williams. We could be seeing quite a battle between those two teams to try and be fastest of the Michelins, but they're going to be under threat from some of those Bridgestone runners here today. Massa, Bernoldi, 11th and 12th, so good effort that from the Arrows driver. Then again a bunch of Michelin runners, Trulli, Irvine, De La Rosa and Sarlo. Jenson Button down in 18th. Really the story of this morning's warm-up. The Michelin users apparently not as quick as the Bridgestone runners. Bridgestone didn't have the advantage in Manicourt last time, but they do seem to have the advantage at the moment in these conditions. But as you say, John, it's going to be very much hotter when they come out to race this afternoon.
Yes, and I think that's the real hope that the Michelin runners, particularly the 2 McLarens and 2 Williams, because they are behind that block of 5 Bridgestone runners, and what they must be waiting for is the temperature to rise, and the expectation that once it does rise, then they are going to be in good shape. Michael Schumacher having a little bit of a problem just getting out of the car, one of the connectors, probably the radio, just snagging him and stopping him getting out. Well, Olivier Panis, no doubt, must feel very happy indeed with what he did in his last lap. Not maybe so happy with Ralf Schumacher, who impeded him in that final 3 corners coming out of pit straight. So really, it's the gamble with the Michelin runners over the pace of the Bridgestone runners. Can McLaren, can Williams bring this race to them? Ron Dennis rarely gets it wrong, and the decision that they've been making on the tyres in particular last weekend in France played right into their hands. Superb job from this man Kimi Raikkonen. Nevertheless, you've got to take the checkered flag. It's no use saying that had it happened or had it not happened. That's the fact of life in motor racing. If you make your own luck, and experience is what Michael Schumacher had, and Kimi, well, he was the first car down. Sometimes you rely on that thing called sixth sense, just give you an indication when there are flags out, and that's what a driver has to look to be aware all the time. Your peripheral vision takes in that information. You have to download it and then take it into account.
So delight in the BAR pit, and I'm sure some good morale boosting in the Jordan pit as well for Giancarlo Fisichella, 3rd fastest this morning, and Takuma Sato 5th fastest. So unlike BAR, who've got 1 car up there and 1 car nowhere, the 2 Jordans are up there. Takuma Sato will start 12th, remember, but still to score any points in this year's championship. Let's take a look back now over the highlights of this morning's warm-up.